I fought fire for 30 years. I know the sound of a room turning on a man. Tonight, it sounded like applause. They handed me a VIP badge like a priest offers last rites, solemn and late. The badge was heavy, plastic smelling of fresh laminate and perfume. Spotlights combed the ceiling of the pavilion, and the bass thumped with the swagger of a young bull. I kept my jacket buttoned and my old pocket watch in my palm, thumb on the dented lid. Habit. You keep time close when crowds get loud. Panic lives in seconds. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Ornella slid through the strobe like she was born of it. My daughter, sequins like sparks, smile like a blade turned sideways. Dad, she sang, kissing the air near my cheek. Elliot trailed behind her, perfect hair and a suit that cost more than my first truck. He flashed his lanyard at a security kid, and the kid melted. Power is just a laminated promise. Come say hi to a few friends, Elliot murmured, steering me toward a circle of men with highball glasses and women with media passes. Cameras sat on their shoulders like carrion birds, waiting, patient. A microphone bloomed in the center of the circle, chrome stem catching light. This is my father, Norbert, Ornella announced, taking the mic as if it had been born in her hand. He's always believed in us. I nodded, because I used to hold her handlebars and run down cracked sidewalks. Back then, belief was a hand on a bike seat. And he's excited to, she glanced at Elliot, confirm his support tonight. A beat. My thumb clicked the watch lid open. The ticking came thin and stubborn, like a cricket in an empty stadium. Support? I said, voice low, steady. The firefighter in me never yells first. You size up the room. Find your exits. Put your back to something that won't burn quick. Elliot smiled a TV smile. You know, the financing we talked about. We didn't talk, I said. Ornella's eyes didn't blink. You promised, Dad. Don't be shy now. The circle waited. Strange how sound can be loud and then not exist at all. In that little vacuum, I saw two things. The little scar under Ornella's lip from the day she fell off that bike, and a tremble in the red tally light on the nearest camera, ready to eat my answer. No, I said, quiet as a locked door. I won't bankroll a show I've never seen. Elliot's smile cracked like a ceramic cup. Ornella's shoulders lifted, then dropped as if she were shedding a skin. She stepped closer, sweet perfume with a bitter aftertaste. You'll regret this. I've regretted worse, I said, and the watch ticked like a metronome calling me true. She leaned in, whispering for me alone. Then don't blame me when people hear why. The truth can handle daylight, I said. That's not what I meant. Elliot raised a finger, and someone killed the music a notch. The room leaned forward, the way a fire leans when it finds new oxygen. My daughter lifted the mic again. Smile returned to factory settings. She turned to the press pit and pitched her voice high, stage bright. Before we go on, she said, I need to share something about my father. The red light on the camera clicked from Ready to Live, and in the hard silence, I felt the old watch's heartbeat under my thumb. One honest sound in a hall built for noise. Then Ornella opened her mouth and aimed the first shot. My father isn't well, Ornella said into microphone, her voice pitched in that fragile register people use at funerals. He forgets things. Sometimes he confuses people. We love him, but he isn't in control anymore. The crowd rippled. Cameras tilted, hungry. I felt the old watch tremble against my palm, like it wanted to leap forward and testify. My jaw tightened, but I didn't speak. Firefighters know. Sometimes you let the flame show itself before you strike it down. Elliot stepped up beside her, laying a supportive hand on her shoulder, the kind of stage gesture you rehearse in mirrors. We've tried to keep this private, he said, voice syrupy. But since Dad insisted on attending tonight, we thought honesty was best. He promised to fund our production, then forgot. He turned to me with wide, innocent eyes. Isn't that right? The guests leaned in, a forest of expectant faces. A few even smiled, like they were watching a scandal sprout in real time. One woman whispered to her companion, hand over lips, as though disease could spread by sound. No, I said, steady. I made no such promise. A ripple of pity sharper than ridicule. Pity cuts deeper when it comes wrapped in doubt. Ornella sighed into the microphone. See? This is what I meant. He truly believes it. I wanted to shout, but shouting only feeds the flames. Instead, I scanned the faces, anchoring myself on details. A man's tie knotted too tight, a champagne flute smudged with lipstick, a camera operator scratching his beard. All of them witnesses, all of them complicit. The music surged back in, lighter this time, as though the sound crew wanted to wash over the discomfort. Ornella and Elliot smiled for photos, hands raised like royalty waving at the peasants. I stood alone, badge swinging on my chest, my honor turned into gossip before my eyes. Later, outside under the neon arch of the festival entrance, I heard two journalists chuckling. Poor guy, one said. Another dementia case in the spotlight. The other scribbled in her notepad, already crafting tomorrow's headline. I walked to the edge of the plaza, where the noise thinned and only the ticking of my watch kept me company. Each tick was a nail, driving deeper into the coffin of the man they wanted me to be. The old firefighter in me whispered, time to fight back, or the fire takes the whole house. That night, back in a rented room, I sat with the badge on the dresser and the watch on the table. The badge gleamed, hollow authority. The watch ticked, stubborn truth. One of them was plastic. The other carried the weight of years and scars. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Check the stream. I tapped the link. The video played. Ornella, eyes glistening, telling the world that her father was confused, forgetful, sometimes violent in his delusions. My name trended beneath it, a hashtag dragging me into ridicule. I closed the phone and breathed deep. They wanted to paint me as an old man, losing grip, but I'd fought fires hotter than this, and I knew where to find water. The watch ticked louder in the silence, a metronome counting down to my answer. Tomorrow I decided I would not stand alone in the smoke. Someone would help me swing back. They say a lie can circle the globe before the truth ties its shoes. That night, my daughter gave it wings. By morning, the article was everywhere. A glossy online magazine had splashed my face across the header. VIP scandal. Fireman father goes senile on stage. The photo caught me mid-blink, mouth half open, a snapshot designed to humiliate. The comments section burned hotter than any fire I'd ever stood in. Poor old man. Shouldn't be left alone. Sad but expected. Stage lights expose everything. Each word was a match tossed onto my reputation. I didn't tell anyone, but I walked Main Street that day with my cap pulled low. Folks who used to nod or shake my hand suddenly tilted their heads, measuring me like a busted hydrant. At the grocery store, I overheard two men in the produce aisle. Isn't that the guy from the article? Yeah, poor bastard. Happens to the best. They didn't know I was 2 feet away, squeezing tomatoes until the seeds nearly burst in my palm. When I got home, Mavis was waiting on the porch, her arms crossed tight around a printed copy of the article. She'd underlined the cruelest lines in red pen, like she was grading a failed paper. You seen this, Norbert? She asked. Her voice carried the edge of someone who's been neighbor, nurse, and nag all in one. I've seen it. They're burying you alive, she said, but you're still breathing. You'll let them finish the job. I looked at her, old friend and nosy guardian angel. They want me quiet. That's why they're shouting. She set the pages down beside my watch on the table. Ink and time. One flimsy, one indestructible. You need someone who knows how to turn this back on them. That was when she gave me a card. White, embossed. Beatrice Kellerman, attorney at law. A name I hadn't heard in years, but one with weight. Mavis tapped the card with her finger. She helped my cousin when the county tried to steal his land. Doesn't blink. Doesn't bend. I studied the card, then the article, then the watch. 3 worlds colliding, law, lies, and time. Call her, Mavis said, before your daughter rewrites your life, so deep no one remembers who you are. That night I dialed. Beatrice's voice came through steady, clipped, professional. Mr. Hanlon, I've already seen the article. I think it's time we discuss strategy. Her confidence hit me like fresh air and smoke. For the first time since the festival, I felt a fire that wasn't eating me. It was building inside me. But just as she spoke, a ping echoed on my phone. A new video spreading fast. Ornella again, hair perfect under studio lights. My father isn't safe to be around. I worry he'll hurt himself or others. My hand clenched around the phone until my knuckles popped. The lie had grown teeth. And now it was hungry. I looked at the watch. Still ticking. Still true. Tomorrow, I swore, I'd start tearing their stage down beam by beam. They want to paint me as a ghost of myself. I told the mirror the next morning. But I've still got fire in these lungs. The reflection wasn't kind. Lines deepened, eyes ringed from sleepless nights, but there was steel under the wrinkles. I buttoned my shirt, slid the old watch into my pocket, and left for Beatrice's office. Her place was downtown, tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered cafe. Nothing glamorous, which suited me fine. The waiting room smelled of coffee and ink. When she stepped out to greet me, she carried herself like a soldier who traded armor for heels. Crisp blazer, sharp eyes, no wasted words. "Mr. Hanlon," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "You've been ambushed." But ambushes only work once. We sat at a desk piled with folders. She pushed one toward me. Inside, glossy photos of Elliot at designer boutiques, receipts for suits worth more than my pension check, and invoices for VIP experiences. Beatrice tapped them with her pen. "Your son-in-law's been funneling money, not into production, into his own lifestyle." I felt heat rising in my chest. And Ornella? She knows, or she looks the other way. Either way, complicit. My fist tightened on the folder. I thought of the little girl who used to climb into my truck, smelling of crayons and bubble gum. How had she grown into someone who'd sell her father's name for a headline? Beatrice leaned closer. "They'll keep hammering the dementia angle. Makes you easy to dismiss. But this," she tapped the receipts, "shows motive. They need your reputation ruined, so no one asks about their spending." The watch ticked in my pocket, and I heard it louder than her pen scratching. Time, reminding me. "You fought worse, but now the fire's in your own house." Before I could speak, the office door cracked open. Mavis shuffled in, cheeks pink from the climb upstairs. She slapped a printed web page on the desk. It's spreading again. "Look." On the page, Ornella's face smiled brightly under the headline. "Daughter pleads for compassion as ailing father threatens family's future." The article quoted her. "I wish people understood. He promised us help, but doesn't remember. He lashes out when cornered." Beatrice read it, jaw tightening. "They're setting you up not just as forgetful, but dangerous. That's escalation. Dangerous." The word rolled in my head like gravel. I dragged men from burning buildings, carried children out of smoke, and now my own blood called me a threat. I stood, pacing. "So what's the move?" Beatrice's gaze sharpened. "We fight in the same arena they chose. Public. But we don't shout. We prove. Documents, witnesses, symbols they can't twist." Mavis spoke up, voice trembling but steady. "People need to see who he really is, not some headline." I pulled the watch from my pocket, set it on the desk. The tick filled the silence. "Then let's make time our witness." Beatrice nodded slowly. "We'll start with the festival's press briefing next week. That's where we turn their spotlight against them." Her words steadied me, but as I pocketed the watch, my phone buzzed. A notification. Ornella was scheduled for a live TV interview that night. Topic: when family becomes a burden. The fire inside me roared. My own daughter was preparing to drag my name through every living room in America. And I knew this was only the opening salvo. They say television flatters the young and crucifies the old. That night, I felt the nails going in. The screen glowed in my darkened room. Ornella sat across from a host whose grin was sharp as a fishhook. Stage lights bathed her in gold. She looked every inch the rising star. She dabbed her eyes delicately with a tissue, the perfect daughter breaking beneath invisible weight. "My father," she said, voice catching, "was once a hero, but he's not himself anymore. He forgets conversations, promises. Sometimes he doesn't even recognize me. It's heartbreaking. The host leaned forward, eyebrows knitted. Are you saying he may not be safe? Ornella nodded, lips trembling. I fear for him. And, honestly, for us, he grows angry. He denies things he swore he'd do. It's like watching him vanish. Every word slid into me like a blade turned slowly. I gripped the armrest until the wood creaked. The watch ticked in my pocket, louder, angrier, as though it wanted to scream at the television in my place. The interview cut to Elliot, who sat beside her, face grave and sympathetic. He spoke like a polished politician. We've done our best. We love Norbert dearly. But when someone's losing touch, sometimes they lash out. That's why we hope for his support, so we could care for him properly, without him wandering into confusion. I turned off the TV before I threw something through it. The silence after their performance was suffocating, broken only by the steady click of time reminding me I was still here, still lucid. The next morning, Main Street felt different. Eyes lingered on me a beat too long. Outside the diner, two men whispered. I heard the words dangerous and unstable. Reputation is a fragile ladder. Miss one rung, and the whole climb collapses. At noon, Mavis knocked, no hesitation. She carried a laptop under her arm. You need to see this. She pulled up the clip of the interview, already racking up shares and comments. Most were sympathetic to Ornella, but some cut deeper. Keep him away from public spaces. Tragic when the old turn bitter. Mavis snapped the laptop shut. You go let them bury you alive with lies? I've fought fire my whole life, I said, voice tight. But this blaze? It's coming from inside my own house. That evening, Beatrice called. I've seen the interview. They're framing you as incompetent, even dangerous. But I've got ammunition. Elliot's receipts, his luxury purchases. We'll use them. Receipts won't be enough, I said. They're drowning the world in words. I need a way to show the truth, not just tell it. Beatrice's voice sharpened. Then find your symbol. Something undeniable. Courts and cameras both love symbols. I looked at the watch in my palm, its face scratched, its tick steady as breath. Fire doesn't care about symbols, but people do. Maybe this battered relic could anchor me when everything else was slipping. That night, lying awake, I imagined Ornella's voice echoing through living rooms across the country. My father isn't safe. I whispered into the dark. You've mistaken my silence for surrender. Ornella, you'll learn the difference soon enough. And as the watch ticked toward morning, I knew the fight was no longer about saving face. It was about tearing down the stage they built out of my name, beam by beam, until the crowd saw the rot. They thought they could build a bonfire out of my name. But they forgot I know how to fight fire. The festival grounds pulsed with life when I returned. Bright banners flapped over the entrance. Music thumped like a restless heart, and crowds drifted between stages with drinks in hand. I kept my cap low, but I didn't skulk. No guilty man skulks, only hunted ones. And I wasn't prey. Not anymore. Beatrice walked beside me, heels striking pavement with a rhythm of certainty. The press briefing is tomorrow, she reminded me. They'll use it to cement their story. But we'll be ready. She slid a folder into my hand. Inside, Elliot's financial trail. 5-figure receipts for suits, champagne, designer shoes. Photos of him flashing his badge in velvet-roped lounges. The contrast burned. My daughter begging the world for sympathy, while her husband bathed in excess. Proof of motive, I muttered. Exactly. But we'll need more. Something visceral. As if on cue, Mavis appeared from the crowd, waving a flyer. You won't believe this, she panted. She handed me the page. Exclusive auction. Rare memorabilia from the Hanlon collection. At the center was a photo I knew too well. My pocket watch. The same one ticking now in my pocket. My stomach clenched. Elliot had tried to sell it. My father's watch. The one that had survived fire, flood, and time itself. He wanted to turn my bloodline into spectacle for a bidder's paddle. They listed it last week. Mavis said, quietly, it didn't sell, but the record's there. Beatrice's eyes sharpened. That's more than proof. That's symbolism. We put this in front of a jury or a camera, and the whole lie unravels. I felt the tick of the watch like a heartbeat, steady against my palm. For the first time in weeks, the anger didn't feel like it was crushing me. It felt like fuel, but the crowd was shifting nearby. Music cut, replaced by the squeal of a microphone. I turned and saw Ornella on a smaller stage, flanked by Elliot, speaking to reporters. "It's tragic," she said, voice carrying like a hymn. "My father refuses help. He lashes out, denies reality. We fear for his safety and our own." Flashbulbs popped, lenses turned, and then the first public humiliation began. I stepped forward, voice steady, carrying years of command. "You fear for safety?" I said, loud enough to cut the hum. "Then explain why your husband tried to sell my watch behind my back." The crowd gasped like a room inhaling smoke. Ornella froze, eyes darting. Elliot's grin faltered. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, heavy, choking. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras swung toward them. Microphones shoved closer. Elliot tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. Ornella stammered. The spectacle was theirs now, not mine. I turned, letting the moment burn behind me, every flashbulb a spark catching their lies. The first blow had landed, but as I left the stage, I knew it wasn't enough to wound them. Tomorrow, I'd have to finish the fire. They thought humiliation would break me. Instead, it broke their mask. The clip of that confrontation spread like spilled gasoline. By midnight, it was on every feed. Me standing tall, Ornella stammering, Elliot's grin melting under the heat of questions. Commentators called it awkward, explosive, even tragically cinematic. For the first time, the narrative cracked. Still, cracks don't topple a building. You need weight. The next morning, Beatrice called me into her office. Papers sprawled across her desk, contracts, invoices, loan statements. "This," she said, tapping a red folder, "is their debt. Hundreds of thousands. Investors breathing down their necks. If the truth surfaces, they're finished." I rubbed the bridge of my nose. So they chose me as a scapegoat. Exactly. If they convince the world you're senile, then their failures aren't mismanagement, they're tragedy. Investors pity them instead of asking questions. The watch ticked in my pocket, steady as always. Lies sprint, but time runs marathons. That afternoon, Mavis joined us with a tablet in hand. "Look at this," she said. She played a clip. Elliot slipping into a boutique, sliding a black card across the counter. The receipt, a jacket worth more than my monthly pension. "I've got friends who track these things," she said with a grin. Beatrice smiled thinly. "That jacket will hang heavier than a chain around his neck." But they weren't going quietly. That evening, the festival announced a special press event. Ornella and Elliot would clarify misunderstandings and honor the truth. The announcement was drenched in self-righteousness. When I arrived at the briefing hall, the air buzzed like a storm before lightning. Rows of chairs packed with journalists, cameras balanced on tripods, lenses hungry. At the front, a long table with name placards. Ornella Hamlin, Elliot Cross. The festival's legal advisor sat at the center, gavel resting beside his notes. They filed into applause, as though villains could be saints with enough lighting. Ornella wore white, angelic. Elliot's suit gleamed. She leaned into the microphone, voice steady. "We're here to tell the truth. My father," she paused delicately, "is not in his right mind. He promised us funds. He denies it now because he doesn't remember." A collective murmur rolled through the crowd. The advisor raised his hand. "Do you swear these statements are true?" "I do," Ornella said. Elliot echoed her. Their voices rang clear into the microphones. Perjury in real time. Beatrice's whisper reached me. "Now's the moment. You ready?" I rose. The scrape of my chair echoed louder than the applause had. Dozens of eyes swung my way. I held up the folder. Receipts, photos, debts, and set it on the table with a thud that carried through the microphones. "This is your truth?" I said, staring at Ornella. "Then let them see what you've been hiding." The reporters surged, flashing bulbs like wildfire. The advisor leaned forward, expression shifting. Elliot paled. Ornella's lips tightened. But I wasn't done. I pulled the watch from my pocket, held it high. Its tick filled the silence between flashes. He tried to sell this, I said, nodding at Elliot. My father's watch. My life's blood. What kind of caretakers steal from the man they claim is unfit? Gasps cut the air. The microphones hissed as reporters shouted questions. Ornella's mouth opened, but no sound came. Elliot reached for the mic, but the advisor's gavel struck wood. Enough. These allegations will be reviewed. And in that charged silence, I knew their stage was collapsing plank by plank. But the fire wasn't out. Tomorrow, the crowd would demand to see who was telling the truth, and I would have to burn brighter than their lies. They wanted to turn me into a cautionary tale, but I was writing my own ending. The fallout from the press briefing spread faster than the music itself. By morning, the headlines had shifted tone. Ornella's perfect image cracks under father's accusations. Receipts raised questions about producer Elliot Cross. For the first time, the press smelled blood on their side of the fence. But predators don't die from scratches. They thrash harder. That evening, the festival organizers summoned me, Beatrice, and the so-called Hamlin team to a closed hearing. A cramped hall, low ceiling, microphones dangling like vultures. At the front, the advisor who had banged his gavel yesterday sat stone-faced. Behind him, banners of the festival, bright and false, like wallpaper hiding mold. Ornella entered first, pristine as a saint in white silk. Elliot strutted after, jaw clenched, his VIP badge swinging like a crown. They looked untouchable until you'd seen the cracks. I had. The advisor gestured. This is a fact-finding session. Statements will be taken and evidence reviewed. Ornella clasped her hands. We only want compassion for my father, she said sweetly. He's confused, combative. These lies about us are proof of his decline. I didn't speak. Beatrice placed a steady hand on my arm, whispering, Wait. Then Elliot leaned forward, voice dripping disdain. The man can't even manage his affairs. He promised support, then backtracked. If this isn't dementia, what is it? The word stirred a crowd of observers, journalists, staff, sponsors. Whispers spread like smoke. My heart pounded. But the watch ticked in my pocket, grounding me. Beatrice rose, sliding papers onto the table. Receipts, she said. Not for production equipment, not for sets or sound. For suits, champagne, private lounges. Funds siphoned for personal gain. The room shifted. Eyes narrowed, pen scratched. Elliot's jaw twitched. But the killing stroke came not from Beatrice, not even from me. It came from the back of the hall, where Mavis suddenly stood. My quiet neighbor, cardigan buttoned wrong, voice shaking but fierce. I've lived next door to Norbert 30 years, she said, surprising the room into silence. He remembers everything. Every storm, every fire, every story. He's no madman. But I've seen that son-in-law of his stagger home with armfuls of bags he didn't pay for. The advisor leaned forward. Are you willing to testify to that? Mavis's chin lifted. On record. Gasps. Ornella's smile faltered, her mask cracking. Elliot gripped the table. Knuckles white. The cameras caught it all. That was the second public humiliation, not staged by me, but delivered by a neighbor they never even considered a player, the kind of witness you can't dismiss. I caught Ornella's eyes across the room. She tried to bore into me with hate, but I only saw the little girl who once asked me if time ever stopped. It doesn't, I thought. Time catches everyone. The advisor struck the gavel. Enough. The evidence is sufficient for further inquiry. The session ended, but the war had not. Outside, under the flickering festival lights, Elliot hissed as he brushed past me, voice low and venomous. You'll regret dragging us down, old man. I let the watch tick in my pocket, steady and unafraid. No, son, I whispered after him. It's you who'll regret underestimating me. The fire was spreading to their side now, and tomorrow the whole stage would feel the heat. They thought I'd burn out before the finale, but I was only stoking the coals. By dawn, the hearing had gone viral. Clips of Mavis, my plain-spoken neighbor in her crooked cardigan, circulated with captions like "The Voice of Truth" and "David versus Goliath Moment." Commentators dissected every frame. Ornella's frozen smile, Elliot's clenched jaw, my silence as the watch ticked. For the first time, strangers online spoke my name with respect instead of pity. But victory is a fragile thing. The festival was desperate to smother the blaze. That morning, they announced a final reconciliation panel to air live before the evening's headline show. Their spin was clear. A family mends under the bright lights. The implication was that I'd bend, apologize, confess confusion, and restore their image. Beatrice wasn't fooled. They'll script the whole event, she warned. If you play along, you're done. If you refuse, they'll call you unstable on camera. They want a confession, I said, but they'll get something else. The day crawled. Crowds surged to the grounds. Banners fluttered, and the smell of fried food mixed with perfume and sweat. Everywhere I walked, whispers followed. Some nods carried sympathy. Others carried suspicion. Mavis kept pace beside me, though her steps were slower now. They won't stop Norbert. They'll burn their own house down if it means taking you with them. I squeeze her shoulder. Then we make sure the house falls the right way. By evening, the hall was packed, cameras perched like vultures. Ornella swept and draped in gold sequins, Elliot gleaming at her side. They radiated stage light before they'd even reached the microphones. The crowd applauded as if saints had entered. The advisor opened the session. Tonight, we hope for healing. Miss Hanlon, you may begin. Ornella clasped her hands, eyes wet. I never wanted this to be public, she said, voice trembling like a violin string. But my father refuses help. He attacks our character when all we want is to protect him. We love him, but he's sick. The audience sighed, a chorus of sympathy. Then Elliot leaned in, dropping his voice like a confidant. Last night, he grew agitated backstage. Staff had to calm him. He doesn't even remember. This is why we need compassion. Lies polish the shine. Beatrice touched my elbow. Your turn. I stood. My watch ticked loud enough in my ears to drown the applause. I've been accused of forgetting, I said into the microphone. But I remember too well. Fires, rescues, promises made and kept. I remember teaching a girl to ride a bike, steadying her until she found her balance. That girl is now on this stage, telling the world her father is broken. The hall stilled. Even the cameras leaned closer. I pulled the watch from my pocket, holding it high. This was an Elliot's auction, a family heirloom. He tried to sell it while telling you I was too confused and know better. Ask yourselves, who here is really losing touch with truth? Gasps rippled. Elliot's mouth tightened. Ornella's eyes darted. For a moment, silence on the stage. Then from the back, a voice shouted, "Show us the receipts." Dozens joined in. Receipts. Receipts. The chant grew, rolling like thunder. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Ornella's face paled under the spotlight. Elliot's knuckles whitened on the table. That was the third public humiliation, delivered not by me, not by Mavis or Beatrice, but by the crowd itself. I looked at my daughter, her mask cracking in real time, and thought, this stage they built to bury me has become their gallows. But I knew the rope hadn't tightened yet. That moment was coming, and when it did, there would be no escape. They built their empire on applause. Now the same hands clapped for their downfall. The chant for receipts echoed long after the panel ended. Ornella and Elliot fled the stage under a storm of flashes, their rehearsed grace crumbling into stiff shoulders and darting eyes. I stayed put, letting the noise swell around me like the roar of fire I hadn't started but knew how to control. Backstage, Beatrice's eyes gleamed. They're wobbling, she said. Public opinion is turning, but wobbles aren't collapse. We need the final push. She spread fresh documents across the dressing table. Bank notices, overdue loans, demands from investors. If these go public, they're finished. I studied the papers, but my mind was elsewhere. Ornella's words replayed in my head. My father is dangerous. That lie had rooted deep, more poisonous than all the others. They'd painted me as a threat, not just a reputation, but to life itself. Mavis knocked softly and slipped inside, carrying a thermos. "Coffee," she said, pouring it into a paper cup. Her hands trembled. "They'll fight like cornered animals now, Norbert. Don't let them bite you first." I managed to smile. You always did know how to pep talk. But her words clung to me. Cornered animals. That's what they were now. And cornered animals don't retreat. They strike. Sure enough, by evening, the festival's official account released a statement. "We stand with Ornella Hamlin and Elliot Cross during this difficult time. Our prayers go to their family as they navigate her father's decline." It was a calculated bullet, aimed at framing me as a tragedy, not a fighter. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but Beatrice steadied me. "Good. Let them commit. The deeper they dig, the harder they'll fall when the truth drops." She was right, but rage has its own pulse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the window of my room, overlooking the festival lights. The watch ticked in my palm, patient, eternal. I remembered Ornella at 16, begging me for money to buy her first microphone. I remembered her voice, clear and untainted, filling our small living room with songs. Somewhere between then and now, she traded that honesty for glitter and lies. The following morning brought a new storm. Tabloids plastered my face with a headline: "Unstable father sabotages daughter's dream." Elliot gave a smug interview, calling me a tragic reminder of what age does to the mind. It should have gutted me. Instead, it focused me. Firefighters know when a blaze grows too wild, you don't smother it, you set a backfire. You burn the ground around it, so it has nowhere left to run. Beatrice was waiting with the match. "Tomorrow," she said, laying her plan bare, "we reveal everything. The debts, the receipts, the attempted sale of your watch. We let the festival's own advisor judge it publicly. They wanted theater? We'll give them the last act." I breathed deep, feeling the weight of it. The crowd, the cameras, the betrayal of my own daughter. It would all converge. As I slipped the watch back into my pocket, the ticking seemed louder than ever, as if the old clock itself hungered for truth. Tomorrow would decide everything. But as I closed my eyes, a knock rattled the door. A voice outside, sharp, familiar. "Elliot's." "We need to talk," he hissed through the wood. The watch ticked once, twice. I rose slowly, knowing this was the sound of the fire coming to my doorstep. They always knocked polite when the cameras were rolling, but in the dark they pounded like thieves. Elliot's fist rapped the door again, sharp, impatient. "Open up, old man." 5 minutes. That's all. I let him wait. A firefighter never opens a door without checking what's behind it. When I finally turned the knob, Elliot slipped in fast, shutting it hard behind him. His cologne hit first. Expensive, choking, a perfume to mask rot. He didn't sit. He prowled. "You think you've scored points with your little theatrics? You embarrassed us in front of the press. But you don't understand the stakes. We've got sponsors, investors, contracts. You'll drag us all down." "You drag yourself," I said. His smile was venom thin. "You want to play saint? Fine. But if you don't back off, we'll bury you in lawsuits until you forget what you're even defending. Dementia won't just be a rumor. It'll be your legal reality." The watch ticked in my pocket, steady as my pulse. I didn't flinch. "You're bluffing. Try me." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Ornella knows exactly how to make a performance stick. Tears on cue, stories about her poor father. It doesn't matter what's true. The world believes a better actor." That was the moment I realized his fear wasn't about me ruining them. It was about losing control of her. He needed Ornella as much as she needed the spotlight, parasite and host. I straightened. "You should have remembered one thing about me, Elliot. I spent 30 years running into fires everyone else ran from. I don't scare easy." His jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he might strike me. Instead, he spat on the floor, hissed, "Tomorrow, you'll wish you'd stayed silent." Then he was gone, door slamming behind him. I sat back down, breathing deep. Anger can be a weapon, but only if you hold it steady. Otherwise, it burns you first. At dawn, Beatrice met me in the lobby with black coffee and sharper words. "Today's a judgment. The festival's legal advisor will rule on the dispute in front of sponsors and press. No more shadows. It's all in the open. I nodded. Then we light the truth. The hall was packed tighter than ever. Sponsors lined the front rows, reporters bristling behind them. Ornella entered last, veil of false grace restored. Elliot close at her side. She avoided my eyes, but when the cameras flashed, she smiled wide, bright as betrayal. The advisor banged his gavel. This proceeding is to settle allegations of misconduct, both financial and personal. Beatrice rose first, laying out the debts, the receipts, the photographs of Elliot draped in luxury, while investors waited unpaid. The murmurs grew louder with each document. Then she placed the auction listing on the table. The watch's photograph, tagged with a price. The advisor studied it, his brow furrowing. Elliot jumped to his feet. Lies. He doesn't even know what he owns anymore. That watch could have been anything. That was his mistake. Because I was already reaching into my pocket. I rose, holding the watch high, its silver face catching the stage lights. The tick echoed faintly in the hushed hall. This, I said, voice clear, is mine. It's been in my family for generations. He tried to sell it without my knowledge. Proof enough of theft. Proof enough of motive. Reporters surged forward, bulbs flashing. Sponsors whispered furiously. Ornella's mask cracked again, her eyes wide, darting, searching for escape. The advisor's gavel slammed down. Order, this evidence will be considered. And in that moment, with the cameras drinking it all in, I knew their empire of lies had minutes left on the clock. The watch ticked in my hand, counting them down. They thought the gavel would save them. But judgment isn't in wood and law. It's in the crowd's memory. The advisor assessed for deliberation. But the room didn't cool. Reporters shouted. Cameras clicked like typewriters on speed. Sponsors huddled in corners, their whispers sharp as knives. Ornella clutched Elliot's arm, smile frozen, while he barked into his phone, sweat glistening under stage lights. Beatrice leaned close. We've wounded them, but they'll thrash until the last breath. Stay sharp. I nodded, though my eyes stayed fixed on Ornella. She wouldn't meet my gaze. My daughter, who once sang lullabies to her dolls in the backseat of my truck, now stood rehearsing lies to a room of strangers. Grief and rage braided together in my chest, hot enough to choke me. Outside, festival chaos churned on, bass rattling the ground, vendors shouting, laughter mixing with rumors. I walked through the crowd, watching my palm. Strangers pointed, some whispering sympathy, others suspicion. That's him. I heard. The crazy dad. Another voice replied, No, the one who exposed them. I stopped at the edge of the main stage, where tech crews tested lights and sound for the evening finale. Microphones stood lined in a row, humming with power. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Every lie, every accusation had flown through these very tools. But Mike doesn't care who speaks. It only amplifies. Truth could roar just as loud as falsehood. Mavis found me there, clutching her purse like armor. You shook them today, she said, but they'll come harder tonight. They'll spin, they'll weep, they'll make the world their stage. I closed the watch lid with a snap. Then we make the stage ours. That night, the verdict was delivered. The advisor returned, face grim. Financial improprieties have been substantiated. Mr. Cross misused investor funds. The production is hereby suspended pending further inquiry. Gasps. Cameras flash. Elliot's face collapsed, his veneers shattering. Sponsors rose, voices sharp, demanding answers. But Ornella, she tried one last act. She stepped to the microphone, eyes shining with stage tears. Please understand, my father isn't well. He believes things that aren't real. We only wanted to protect him. The crowd wavered, sympathy tugging at their faces. For a moment, I felt the old grip of despair, her lies sliding in like smoke, choking oxygen. Then Mavis, bless her stubborn soul, stood again from the back row. Don't you dare, she said, voice shaking but clear. Don't you dare paint him as broken. I've watched him shovel my driveway at dawn. I've watched him carry neighbors through storms. He remembers every kindness, every scar. He remembers more truth in one breath than you've told in a lifetime. The hall erupted. Some clapped, some shouted. Ornella's eyes went wide, her tears suddenly hollow under the harsh lights. Elliot tried to tug her away, but reporters boxed him in, microphones stabbing like spears. The advisor's gavel slammed again. Order! Order! But order was gone. I slipped the watch back into my pocket, its ticking drowned by the storm of voices. Time had shifted. The tide belonged to truth now. Yet I knew this wasn't the end. The final stage, the grandest stage, the main festival performance, still waited. And they would cling to it like a sinking ship to driftwood. I whispered to myself, tomorrow, the fire ends where it began, under the lights. The watch ticked on, counting down to their last curtain call. They wanted the main stage to be their resurrection. I planned to make it their funeral. The festival climax was set for Saturday night. The grand performance, live-streamed to millions, sponsors seated in velvet rows, every camera hungry. Ornella and Elliot fought tooth and nail to keep their slot, begging organizers with promises of a redemptive spectacle. The board, wary of lost revenue, relented. They'd have one last chance to save face. Beatrice saw through it instantly. They'll try to bury you in spectacle. Lights, music, tears, everything they can muster to drown out facts. Then we don't whisper facts, I said, feeling the watch tick in my palm. We thunder them. The day passed in a blur of preparations. Crews tested pyrotechnics. Screens flashed promotional reels, and Ornella's face beamed from every banner. It felt obscene, like plashing stained glass over a cracked wall. The lies were still underneath. Backstage, Mavis paced, nerves jittering. You're sure about this? Sure as fire eats wood, I said. They chose the stage. So we'll finish it there. Night fell. The arena glowed with neon and floodlights, a cathedral of noise. Ornella emerged in a gown of silver sequins. Elliot striding behind like a general marching to war. The crowd erupted, cheering on cue, though I saw the hesitation in some faces. Doubt had seeped in, but glitter still blinds. She stepped to the microphone. We dedicate tonight's performance to family, to love, to forgiveness. Her voice dripped honey, eyes glistening as if she were martyr and savior both. The orchestra swelled behind her. Cameras zoomed tight. I stood in the wings, watch in one hand, folder of evidence in the other. Beatrice whispered, when the moment comes, don't hesitate. The music soared. Ornella sang, voice flawless, practiced, rehearsed to perfection. For a moment, I remembered a girl in our living room, barefoot on the rug, singing off-key but pure. The memory hurt worse than the lies. When the song ended, Elliot took the stage, arm around her. We asked for your compassion, he told the crowd. We've carried the burden of a sick father with as much grace as we can. But tonight we stand for love. Applause thundered. For a heartbeat, it seemed they might win it all back. Hearts, headlines, investors. Then I walked out. The applause faltered, fractured. Cameras swung toward me. I stepped into the light, watch gleaming in my fist. Love, I said, voice amplified across the arena. You talk of love while you bleed investors dry, while you sell your father's heirlooms behind his back, while you call him dangerous just to hide your own fraud. Gasps rolled through the crowd. Screens magnified the watch in my hand, every scratch visible. I held it high. This watch has survived fire, flood, decades of time, and still it ticks true, unlike the lies you fed these people. Reporters surged. Sponsors leaned forward, eyes sharp. Ornella's smile shattered. Elliot's face drained of color. But before the crowd could erupt, Ornella grabbed the mic, desperate. Don't listen. He's confused. He's delusional. Her voice cracked, echoing false under the unforgiving lights. And in that instant, the fire was mine. The stage had become a crucible, and I knew. Tomorrow, their glittering facade would melt to ash. They thought the crowd would drown me out. Instead, the silence after my words was louder than any song. For a long moment, the arena held its breath. Ornella's denial rang thin, like glass about to shatter. Elliot stepped forward, yanking the microphone from her grip. His voice thundered desperate. "This man is sick. He's a danger to himself and everyone here. He doesn't know what he's saying." But the crowd wasn't buying it. Too many receipts. Too many cracks in their perfect masks. A sponsor in the front row stood up, waving a tablet. "Explain these invoices, Elliot. Private jets? Lounges? Thousands in luxury while we invested in your show." His voice cut like a blade through the tension. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Ornella's face drained of color. She tried to speak again, but the noise rolled over her. Beatrice stepped onto the stage beside me, holding up the folder. "These are the records. Every debt, every misuse of funds. See for yourselves." Cameras zoomed in on the pages. Figures lit the jumbotron, projected larger than life. Every number was a dagger. Elliot lunged, trying to snatch the folder, but tripped under the blinding stage lights. His polished shoes slid, and he crashed against the mic stand. The screech echoed like nails across glass. Gasps rippled. Phones recorded every stumble, every grimace. That was humiliation in its rawest form, public, undeniable, permanent. Ornella, frantic, knelt beside him, grabbing the microphone with shaking hands. "Please, he's confused, he's cruel. He doesn't understand what he's doing." Her voice cracked, begging for sympathy. And then from the stands, a sound began, low, rising. The chant, "Receipts! Receipts! Receipts!" The rhythm swelled, thousands of voices pounding like war drums. It wasn't just demand anymore. It was verdict. I stepped forward, lifting the watch once more. "This is all the receipt I need," I said, voice steady. The tick filled the silence between the crowd's roars. "Time doesn't lie, and time has run out for yours." The cameras drank it in. Ornella froze, staring at me with eyes wide, her face projected on the massive screens above us. For the first time, she looked small, no sequins, no spotlight could save her. The advisor from the hearings rose from the front row, climbing the stage with deliberate steps. His voice carried, firm, unyielding. "Effective immediately, the Hamlin Cross production is terminated. Sponsorship revoked. Access badges rescinded." Gasps turned into shouts. Investors stormed toward the exits, phones glued to their ears, barking orders. Security staff hovered, waiting for instructions. Ornella dropped the mic. The clang echoed through speakers, sharp, final. Elliot groaned on the floor, head in his hands. I stood tall, watch glinting in my fist. For the first time since this hell began, I wasn't defending myself. I was watching justice unfold in real time. But inside, I felt no triumph yet. Only the hollow echo of a truth I couldn't escape. Victory meant losing my daughter forever. The crowd's roar swelled again, drowning thought. And I knew the last ember of this fire would burn tomorrow, when the world printed its verdict in ink that couldn't be erased. They built their stage out of lies. Tonight, I watched it collapse plank by plank. Security escorted Elliot first. His suit was torn, his badge ripped from his neck, his protest swallowed by jeers. Ornella followed, sequins dimmed under the glare of spotlights, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Every camera followed them, two fallen idols in the harsh theater of truth. But victory has a strange taste, bitter as much as sweet. I stood there, the watch warm in my palm, as the arena emptied into chaos. Sponsors barked into phones. Reporters filed live updates. The chant of receipts still echoing in the corridors. Backstage, Beatrice exhaled, shoulders finally relaxing. They're finished. The contracts are void, the debts exposed. The press will gut them by morning. Mavis clasped my arm, eyes wet. "You did it, Norbert. You showed them who you are." I nodded, but my chest felt heavy. I showed the world. But what I lost was blood. Later, in the quiet of my room, the silence pressed harder than the crowd's roar had. I placed the watch on the nightstand. Its tick filled the emptiness, steady, almost cruel. I thought of my wife, long gone, of the daughter we raised together. I remembered bedtime stories, scraped knees, the first time Ornella sang in church. All of it stood beside the image of her eyes tonight, wide, broke and angry. The news broke before dawn. Headlines screamed, "Festival stars exposed as fraudsters." Ornella Hanlon lied about father's decline. Clips of her trembling denial replayed on every feed, contrasted with the evidence, with Mavis's testimony, with Elliot's fall. Public sympathy shifted overnight. They weren't victims anymore. They were villains. I walked Main Street that morning, cap low as usual, but the stares were different now. Nods of respect, a clap on the shoulder, a voice calling, "Good on you, Norbert." Took guts. Still, each word cut deeper. Respect felt hollow when it was bought with betrayal. At Beatrice's office, she laid the final documents on the desk. The advisor's ruling is formal now. Their project is dead. Their reputations are ash. "Then it's over," I said. She studied me. "For them, yes. For you? That depends. The world will ask how you feel. They'll want a quote, a headline, something poetic." I looked at the watch. Its hands pointed steady toward noon, unbothered by the chaos it had witnessed. Poetic? I murmured. Truth doesn't need poetry, just clarity. That night, I sat alone, festival lights fading outside the window. My phone buzzed with messages from reporters, all demanding my reaction. I ignored them, staring instead at the watch ticking on the table. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. The fire had burned through, leaving only smoke. But in that smoke, one final ember glowed. Because tomorrow, I knew, would not just be their ending, it would be my closing act. And when the curtain fell, I'd make sure the last sound wasn't applause, but the tick of truth outlasting music. They said music is eternal. But tonight, truth was louder. The final day of the festival dawned strangely quiet. Stages still stood, banners still fluttered, but the crowds felt muted, whispers replacing cheers. News trucks lined the plaza like vultures. Every screen, every feed carried the same story. Ornella and Elliot, exposed, disgraced, abandoned by sponsors. I walked through it all slowly, the old watch in my pocket, ticking steady. People parted without me asking, some nodding, some whispering, none daring to mock now. Respect had returned, but it carried a chill pity. Backstage, Beatrice met me with her calm steel. They're gone. Elliot's already on a plane. Ornella, no one knows where she is. Mavis appeared too, her cardigan buttoned wrong again, eyes kind but heavy. You've got what you wanted, Norbert. Justice. But it costs, doesn't it? I nodded. Revenge always costs. The closing ceremony was scheduled at dusk. A final performance, a symbolic farewell to the festival. They'd asked me to say a few words, to represent resilience. I almost laughed at the irony, but I agreed. Some stages can't be avoided. When I stepped onto the platform, the crowd hushed. Spotlights washed over me. Cameras blinked red, and the air held that familiar festival charge. I took the microphone. For weeks it had been their weapon. Tonight, it was mine. I was called sick, dangerous, forgotten. But here I stand, clear as the tick of this watch. I held it high, silver face gleaming under the lights. This belonged to my father. Elliot tried to sell it, like he tried to sell lies about me. But time doesn't lie. It remembers. And so do I. The arena was silent. Every ear bent toward me. I breathed deep, steady. Ornella is my daughter. I love her more than air. But love isn't licensed for betrayal. She chose deceit. She chose ambition over blood. And tonight, the world chose truth. Gasps rippled, cameras zoomed. I closed the watch lid with a snap. It echoed like a gavel. Music fades. Lights die. But truth is eternal. Let this be the last note of their performance. The crowd erupted, cheers, applause, chants of my name. But I didn't lift my arms in victory. I stepped back, letting the sound roll over me, not through me. My fight was done. Later, in the quiet of a dressing room stripped bare, I sat alone. The watch ticked in my palm, steady, patient. I opened its face, adjusted the hands, listening as it fell back into rhythm. Outside, the festival dismantled. The lights dimmed. The stage is lowered. The crowd dissolve into the night. I whisper to the ticking, to the silence, to the ghosts who carry me here. The music dies, but the truth lives. And as the last echoes of applause faded behind me, the watch ticked on. Final proof that time, not spectacle, writes the real ending. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.